Okay. Hello, Don. Larry, how are you? David from Ottawa. Hello. 9A3 GVD. Wow. Hello, Don. Got 13 watching now. We'll just wait a moment for a few more and we'll continue our little informal Saturday thing here. These are the questions that I have to answer. This is actually going to bring us not quite, but pretty close to up to date. And then I think next week we'll be up to date. Just a second. I'm going to turn off that fan here. Fairview, North Carolina, from Denmark. Wow. Let's see, where is the... Okay. From Portland, Oregon, from James King, Care Bear TV. I'm coming in from about 10 miles north of Ridgway, Colorado, which is a little mountain town in southwestern Colorado. The county that I live in, Ouray County, which is a rare county, by the way, for ham radio, has about 4,500 residents and one traffic light. Hello from Germany, Georgia, from Hainain Land, Bahrain, from Germany. Hello, everybody. Let's see, what would be the latest in channel news while we're waiting for people to gather. First of all, I trust my audio is okay. It looks like it's okay. If it's not, let me know. I'm just using the microphone that's built into the computer. Probably makes me sound different from my videos. Put a video up Thursday on the buddy pole antenna, which is a portable antenna designed for portable use. Although you could use it, it's quite weatherproof. You could leave it outside as long as you want. I was quite surprised with how sturdy it was. I'm also quite surprised with how many views that video has gotten. It's really going to town. From Lebanon, this is an international crowd here. Oklahoma City, very good. Been down this week with quite a heck of a cold, so I probably still sound like it. One of those things that comes all the time. Good evening from Denmark. How are you? It is just now noon here. In the mountain states, we're in the United States Mountain Standard Time right now, where it's noon and the clock shows 1900 UTC, 1904. I've got a little clock from QRP Labs. I'll show it to you. This, right there, okay. And it's not going to focus, is it? Anyway, it's connected to a GPS receiver, so it gives me a pretty good time. Excuse me. This is the camera, is a Logitech HD 1080p, so hopefully I'm broadcasting in reasonable quality out there. Okay, Ohio. Let's see, Lebanon, Denmark. Just replaced my TS430 with the new TS590GS. My first contact was Lydia from Tokyo, Japan, on my barely working Alpha Delta CC. Only works from 7240 to 7290. Well, It can probably be retuned a bit. That's you might want to tune it down to a little lower in the band. Below 7200 you might get more context. Tony, let's see, KN4ONY says hello and thanks for what I do. From Branson, Missouri, hello from Germany. From Whiskey 5, Shortwave Varmint. There's a pretty good set of phonetics. Trevor loves the channel. Thank you. Appreciate that. We have 49 people watching. I think we can go ahead and get started. This is pretty cool, and let me know. Wants to know how to transmit in the FM band. We may want to remember to come back to that. The username is in Greek. I guess it would depend on the repeater situation there, and I don't know the repeater norms for Greece, but I would imagine they're not much different from in the United States. Most equipment for VHF and UHF ham bands are FM. Audio's great. All right. Good. Here we go. Okay. I've got a bunch of them here, and we'll see how they're doing. Again, these are sent to hamradioanswers. Hamradioanswers, all one word, at gmail.com. It's hamradioanswers@gmail.com will come straight to this basket mailbox where I collect these, and I will answer them on a Saturday on this show. Okay. Now, I know occasionally people say things that they don't really want public, so excuse me if I don't read these verbatim on the air. Okay, the first one comes from Saeed, OH6EAC. Facing a problem with the UBITX, the micro BITX version 3. The problem is when my UIBX transmit in SS mode set, tune, step, or general, or ham band, this type of text comes in the display. Also, a lock symbol appeared. Seems like function button got pressed. I opened the function button line until the main board, but still a problem. WLoad plus single sideband is no problem. CW plus antenna is no problem, but CW plus antenna is a problem. That is very interesting. The micro BITX, made in India, is a very interesting little QRP rig. It's about, if you feed it 5 volts, if you feed it 12 volts, it will put out about 5 watts on either single sideband or CW. And the way you differentiate it, if you push the transmit button and speak into the microphone, it's single sideband. If you simply press down on the key, it's CW. It's instant mode switch there. It's a nice little radio. It comes from India. The cost, I believe, is $129. You can get it at hfsigs.com, hfsigs.com. And the fellow who puts these together will give you the board, which is complete and tested, and give you the peripheral components like the variable resistors for volume control and stuff like that. And we'll give you connectors that plug into little plugs on the circuit board, and then you have to wire in all the connectors. And you have to find your own enclosure for it, which is actually a little harder than it seems, considering that there is a square display in there. It's a little hard to cut those square display holes, but that's the challenge with that particular one. I don't know what is happening here. It does sound like there's some sort of RF feedback. It's a QRP radio, so there shouldn't be too much of it. Distance between radio and antenna is not big. Any suggestion? I'm trying to remember if you can turn down the power on that. If you can, you turn it down to almost nothing, then keep ramping it up till you start having the problem, and then you can be sure. That's about... let's see. Let's not have political discussions in the band. This is about ham radio here. I'll put that user in timeout. We don't need political discussions in here. Marine band CB shortwave. Let's see. Love my BITX with a 45 watt amp. Well, you know, it's a very inexpensive radio, and if you put an amplifier on it, you can get some power out of it. It's a very inexpensive way to get into ham radio. Ham radio has changed a lot. Yes, it is changed a lot. Quite a bit. Okay. I think we've helped there. Okay, this is from Kevin Hughes, KJ7BKO. I'm returning to ham radio. Been out of it for 40 years, building my first dipole antenna in 40 years. The process of ordering bulk copper wire. The last wire antenna I made was soft bare copper. Yes, worked well for the 2 years. It did stretch. Soft copper, like house wiring, will stretch with time. It'll stretch a certain amount and then stop stretching. So come out to CPAC this spring. Well, that'd be fun. Quite a hike. Like the red pillow up on the shelf. Yes, one of the emails was about that. The red pillow on the shelf comes from YouTube. And I went to a YouTube gathering in Salt Lake City 2 years ago, something like that. And for answering a question right, I got that pillow. And that was a very enjoyable event. I implemented a lot of the suggestions that I got on it. But yeah, I'm quite proud of that pillow. Is PSK31 used much anymore? Not nearly as much as it used to be. A lot of the people who were on PSK31 went to FT8. PSK31 is designed to be a conversational mode where you type at each other. The problem with it is that all of the software for PSK31, like FLDigi, Ham Radio Deluxe, and so on, enables the use of macros. So what PSK31 sort of devolved into was people sending macros to each other, and then when they ran out of macros, they used their final macro to end the conversation and say they're 73s. I think that's really sad because I've tried building conversations in PSK31 and then just get hit with macros. I think people don't all like to type or something like that. Set up CW scads. I need to get on CW. What brings the future? Just wake up the next day. What was it that John Lennon said? Life is what happens while you're making other plans. It will come. Newer to this hobby, is there a coax cable that is suggested to use for ham use? Yeah, the 50 ohm cables. I use RG8X for a lot of stuff. RG213 is a heavier cable if you've got a long UHF VHF run. I have a bunch of LMR 400, and frankly I'm kind of sour on it. It's very difficult to deal with. Hi from Puerto Rico. Hello. Versus coax for cable TV. Ham coax is generally 50 ohms. And the cable TV is, I think, 75. You can feed antennas with cable TV coax. There will be some mismatch, but not terrible. It can be made to work, and it's a lot cheaper than ham radio coax. You can go down to Home Depot and pick up RG6, which is the cable TV coax, RG6. The Rim of Hell and Boron. I've been to Boron. No Soylent Green today. No, I didn't grab one. Don't use cable TV coax. Order RG8X or LMR 400. Get the RG8X. Oh, it's a lot easier to deal with. We have problems with young OMs, old men, young old men. There's no interest in ham by our youth. Actually, there's quite a bit if it's properly presented. I used to work with a group in Boulder, Colorado called Bark Junior, Bark's Boulder Amateur Radio Club, and they had a junior division. And it was run by a retired kindergarten teacher, Ellie Van Winkle, in 0QCX, and she's since passed away, as has her husband. And they pulled together a outfit every Saturday for years. I worked with them for 10 years. Both my kids got their licenses through them. At any given time, they'd have about 30 kids active. So the kids, I think, enjoy different things. I know they love the fox hunts. It's just, they're there. It's just they've got to discover it. And, radio has its magic, and I think it can be done. If you have a problem understanding what interests youth in ham radio, ask young ham radio operators. I was at, what did they call it? It was up in Breckenridge, Colorado. It was the Colorado... It was the Rocky Mountain Hamvention. And the ARRL was speaking at lunch. Rick Roderick got up and talked about how we got to figure out how to get ham radio to youth and stuff like that. I stood up and said, in 10 minutes there is a youth forum. Why don't we go there and ask the youth what gets them into ham radio? And you know how many of the staff came and listened to that forum? 0. If you want to know what interests somebody, ask them. Don't know. We're a bunch of old people sit around and think about what the world was like 65 years ago. Get me off my soapbox here. Okay, we have, Xander. Thank you for your kind words. 2-meter stealth antenna in a tree. Do you think that the foliage, not in contact, can affect the performance of the antenna? Some. The foliage is largely transparent to radio waves, but not fully. I think your antenna should work just fine. Greetings from the Holy Land. Hello. CW forever. Let me see. What's my opinion on satellite radio? Well, I have it in my car. I listen to it. Hi from the UK. Boron gnarly. Yeah, it is definitely desert. I grew up in Southern California, and there's a place out in the desert called Lucerne Valley where I spent a huge amount of time as a youth. So I really love the California desert. Where are we in the solar cycle? We keep thinking that we are at the bottom of the solar cycle, and we keep hoping to see some sunspots from the new solar cycle, and they're not showing up. There is talk, loose talk, that we're going into another Maunder minimum. This last couple solar cycles were terrible. I can remember the cycle before that. Wow. I was getting 15-meter DX at 11 o'clock at night. Wow. Inherited my grandfather's ham equipment, so I'm getting newer equipment now. Yeah, some of the old stuff is fun to play with. The new stuff is sure a lot easier to use. Hello from Pennsylvania. The old radio I have is a Hallicrafter's radio my grandfather bought in 1947. Hallicrafters was one of the key ham radio equipment manufacturers back then. Okay, good evening from Sweden. Hello, we are rock bottom cycle. Boy, feels like the top was rock bottom too. Okay, well, we're to our second question. I'm quite happy to answer questions that are in the text stream. By the way, YouTube has a way that it's called Super Chat. where you can pay money to get your chat question bumped to the top. And I have really resisted that. I have a real problem with paying money to ask a question. I mean, gosh, guys, this is ham radio. I'm not selling investment secrets or something. So I have not enabled Top Chat. I try to answer all of the questions that we have. Teaching ham classes to local CERT. That's from 2 years using the Gordon West material. So far, over 200 new hams. Congratulations to you. I hope you, and I'm sure you do, follow up with them to make sure that they get and stay active. Good source of info on what ham satellites are active on what modes. I have a book. This book. It's put out by AMSAT, amsat.org. Getting started with amateur satellites. Now, I picked this up at the Dayton Hamvention, and it has all sorts of ideas for antennas and what to do, and it lists all the different satellites that are up there and what their parameters are. So that's available from amsat.org. Let's see, what do you think? Slinky dipole aerial in my loft. People have done them. They were really popular 30, 40 years ago. What are your thoughts on the proposed license class changes? A lot of discussion's been quiet lately. Yes, it has. I would very much like to see the technicians get some meaningful HF privileges, meaning sideband on HF. Because it will, I think it'll make ham radio a lot more meaningful. I tell people, if they can, study for their tech and their general, get them both at the same time, and then get on HF, play on HF, use VHF as for local communications and stuff like that, and then really get into HF, and then when you do get your extra, it'll be a lot more meaningful. I've met a lot of people who've gone straight to extra in a test setting, 0 to 90 in one test session, and there's a real high attrition rate. They don't get on the air. MFJ's regenerative receiver with their active antenna, do you think it will work? Yes, it should. amsat.org, right. Thank you. Hello from Alabama. Have you contacted the ISS? I have not. Some years ago, when the Russian Mir was up, they had a packet station, and the closest I came to contacting them was I tried to connect using packet and got a reject back. Well, I figure a reject was a signal that was red, so I said, wow, I got a signal from space. That's the closest I ever got. Are you a buttons or touchscreen kind of guy? They both work. I like buttons because they stay in one place, but oftentimes the meaning changes. Okay, transmit on an ATAS 120 screwdriver antenna, I think, with my FT857 using a counterpoise kit. Found it is directional. Yes. When the counterpoise was on the west, it was dicey on the east. Yes, if you have a single wire counterpoise, your antenna will tend to transmit in the direction of the counterpoise. If your antenna is in the right rear quarter, your transmissions will tend to go to the front left. Enjoyed studying for extra now. Good man. I love big knobs. Yes, we all do. Now you have problems with the MFJ end-fed antenna. Do you have any recommendations on a good end-fed 10 to 80? What is the name of that? I'll think of it. If I think of it, I'll let you know. My primary vertical antenna is my station antenna, my official station antenna. I've got quite a few antennas up right now. It's a Butternut HF9V, which I do not recommend because of the number of radials that it takes to make this thing work. it's a difficult antenna to tune. But once you get it tuned and once you get the radials in, it performs very well. Is it true that a geostationary satellite is being moved into position for the U.S.? There are many hundreds of geostationary satellites. Oh my goodness. Bunches of them. Dish Network, for example, uses geostationary satellites. They've got several up there, which is why your Dish television satellite antenna has 3 feed horns on it, because it's looking at 3 different satellites. There are many, many geostationary satellites. Now, by the way, I think I sense a concern here. The geostationary satellites are in orbit above the equator. If they are not above the equator, they are not stationary. They will move. They'll move in a figure 8. So they can move, so they're up over the U.S., but then in a day they'll be down over South America, and then they keep doing sort of a figure 8 over that. They'll do a figure 8 anyway, unless there's some good station keeping. So there are lots of geostationary satellites. They're used for military communications, not spy satellites. Spy satellites are very low Earth orbit. But military communications is up there. Intelsat, Inmarsat. There's just gobs of them up there, mostly for communications or for satellite broadcasts, things like that. Okay, is it worth it to buy a single sideband 2-meter transceiver? Well, that depends. If you have a tech can operate single sideband on 2 meters. Usually the single sideband 2 meters are also HF rigs. What are other broadcast receivers? So there's lots of them. All the HF receivers these days are general coverage broadcast receivers. Log periodic might work well for broadcast reception, and sometimes a long wire works too. Is narrowband best for FM? Yes. Hi from Cape Town. I meant for amateur use. Log periodics are designed for extremely wideband use. Very large chunk of the HF spectrum, whereas the amateur bands tend to be narrow and in specific spots, which is why when you get a multiband beam, you're actually getting 3 beams sort of nested together. Dual license UK USA, hold FCC advanced class. Should be granted extra class. No, there's tests to go, sorry. And what's sad about it, I was advanced before I became an extra. But I became an extra back when advanced was a supported license, so I only had to pass the extra test, which was on the difference between the highly technical advanced and the extra, which is also highly technical. So most of the stuff on the test to me seemed to be about administering the VE program. Back then, the advanced test was the hard one. Now the extra test is the hard one. So if you're an advanced and you want to become an extra, you got to go past, it seems like, past the same test over again, but that's how it's ended up. EndFeds, F-E-D-Z. That's the name of the company that makes the good end-fed antenna. Is there an optimum height for an offset dipole if I want to use it for as many bands as possible? No. Get it up high. Depending on what band you're on, it's going to have a different pattern. The best height for a dipole is half a wavelength. If you go above half a wavelength, you start splitting vertical lobes. Have you experimented with using the 1886 receive loop in a horizontal configuration? No, I have not. It should be uniform. Poser, it's from Daryl Leach. I don't think so. Geostationary sats over the USA. They might be for the USA, but they're going to be over the equator. How do I determine if I need the one-to-one balun on the shack end of my feed line? You probably don't. Good afternoon from KE0RFZ. Did pass the 20 word per minute Morse code? I did. How broad is the disc cone? The cone comes down about 60 to 75 degrees, down pretty far. We've had good success with the ICOM folded dipole, much like a BW. Dropped our noise level about 3 dB. That's good. Okay. Let's try and get to some of these questions here. I am returning to ham radio. Been out of it for 40 years. Okay, this is the one who has the bulk copper wire. I did readjust it several times, so I'm thinking about using stranded this time for the added strength. However, when I think about stranded wire, I think about inductance and inductors. To make an inductor, we wrap wire in a circle, make a whiting. So isn't stranded copper wire also an inductor? You know, actually no more than non-stranded wire, solid wire. They're wound in a circle, but they're all shorted together. So any inductive effects that come from the stranding are canceled out. Plus, the circle that they go around is so small. No, go ahead with the stranded wire. Yes, you can use stranded wire for your dipole. No problem with that. It actually has a little bit more surface area, so it's going to be slightly more effective. Let's see. Barker Williamson. Oh, okay. Does excess coax matter, or should I cut it as short as possible? If you've got 500 feet of excess coax, yeah. But if it's just a few extra feet because you got something from some store, you bought 100 and you ended up using 80, and you've got the other 20 just coiled up, that's fine. There's no problem with that. Plus, if you cut it, you've got to put another connector on it. I have a SolarCon A99 antenna that I am currently not using. I was wondering if it would be possible to use this as a 10-meter vertical as well as an 11-meter CB antenna. So I could set up a selector switch in reverse as a means of connecting the two radios. What antenna tuner could be used to make up the difference between the two bands? A band cut for 11 meters, or an antenna cut for 11 meters is not a 10-meter antenna, and vice versa. I mean, it may not seem like much. One's at 27, one's at 28 megahertz, but they're different. If you want to use your SolarCon antenna on 10 meters, you'll have to remove some of the loading from the bottom. Yeah, it's not easy to combine the two. Okay, this one's from Michael Shirey, KD8ZCM. Watching video 8 on station grounding. As for further information, asked Dave about getting RFI out of the shack with ferrite, toroid core, and beads. How and why they work, please. The problem with RFI issues is that they are so specific to the situation. You can put in ferrite beads on the power supply, on the coax coming in. Sometimes just having an antenna tuner will keep the RF, the stray RF away from the radio. You rearrange cables. Look for ground loops. ARRL publishes books on RFI suppression. You might look at those. Using the Linko DX SR8T, which is an HF rig that has a dedicated 8075 meter NVIS inverted V dipole I built, Alpha Delta Delta C Ballon. Okay, for local emergency and daily traffic nets, I am ARRL official relay station. Good for you for getting involved. Every evening, maybe it's just the band changing with the sun going down, but I get a lot of interference or RFI in my shack when my nets become active. As you mentioned in video 8, I do have my station RF grounded via the coax. And a small flat strap running from the ground lug of my HF radio to the ground rod. You should also take your antenna coax down to your ground rod and put in a lightning arrestor and ground that lightning arrestor right to the ground rod. That can really help a lot. Help me. Okay. Can you connect an antenna to transceiver with 75 coax instead of 50? Yes, you can. It will move a 1-to-1 SWR to about 1.6 to 1. Video showing the difference in filters for CW and sideband, how each apply. I don't think I have. I'll have to take care of that. N3NDX is here. Please explain ground loops. The signal has two ways to get to ground of different lengths. And when that happens, you get phase differences in the way it hits the ground. So you can start getting reflections that come back up and go back around and so on. That's a ground loop. And it can cause issues with RFI in the shack because the ground loop acts as an antenna. This one is from John KN4JHB. There was a time when the N would have signified the novice license. It doesn't anymore. Dave, you have mentioned that you transmit weather data from your home station. I used to. I used to put it out on APRS. I had a little APRS station here at home that I put the weather data out. This was transmitted via either Whisper or APRS. It was APRS. I'd like to read more about using amateur radio to send data of this type. Would appreciate suggestions on equipment necessary to start doing this from my home station here in Florida. What is the name of the company that made that? Anybody know? There's a company that makes little kits that are designed for APRS. Look. Bionics. B-Y-N. Bionics. B-Y-N-I-C-S. Look that up on the internet. There's a bunch of kits that they make for APRS. It's good stuff. Feel like to Echo. That would be British Isles. Local box store website states there are 14 gauge wires to be soft copper. Is that okay for making a 40 meter dipole? Yes, it will stretch with time, so you may have to readjust it, but that's okay. It's a lot cheaper. You can get hard drawn wire. It's a little harder to get and a whole bunch harder to work with. Keith Hawkins, N7KON. Dave, have you reviewed the Wolf River coils and antennas? I looked them up. Looks like they sell sort of parts and pieces for antennas. Been ham long time, just now getting back into it in depth. Retirement will now allow time. I am going to pull the camp trailer around the area and have seen these antennas on YouTube, but does not seem like anyone has put up a video based more on using it. Lots of videos using antenna analyzers. Well, I'm in the middle of testing an antenna that is designed specifically for that use case, and that antenna is the Buddy Pole. I did the unboxing. Do you remember, Nelson? Please see my question above. Rob, I'm sorry, I don't see your question. Can you send it again? I'm sorry. MFJ 16010 antenna tuner. It says to use as a random wire tuner. It can, yes. Has two PL259 connectors in the back. Can you hook up coax to it, or are you supposed to alligator clip a wire to it? If it does not have my antenna tuner here. This is my very first MFJ product. I bought this many years ago. It's a little antenna tuner called a VersaTuner model MFJ 901B. I mean, I got this a long time ago. Now, notice on the back you've got the connector for the transmitter, the connector that goes to the antenna. It says coax, that means to the antenna. You can connect a balanced line between here and here. Okay, balanced line would go there, but to do so you have to put in a shorting wire down to here. Okay, this connects to station ground. If you do a long wire, you do it off of this one right here, and this will tune the long wire. So this over here will connect to the transmitter, and then you put your long wire. If you don't have a connector like that on the back, it makes it a little hard. You have to put in sort of a coax connector that just has the long wire coming out of it. Make sure this thing is grounded to your station ground, or you're going to have unexplained results. And the front of it is the usual for the T-tuner. You've got two capacitors here, and in the middle is a variable inductor, and then these are capacitors, which are easy to tune. And this antenna tuner works fine. Okay, I hope that helps answer the question. Let's see. Banana plug works best. Yes, that would work very well. How do I get my Anytone 868 ready for a hotspot? Use simplex for the hotspot frequency rather than split frequency, and put it on the lowest power possible. Difference between a ground wave and a surface wave. A ground wave in HF hugs the ground, lower HF and MF and low F, low frequency. Okay, it just hugs the ground. It's a vertically oriented wave. A surface wave is a wave that's an acoustic wave, and it's transverse in the way that it goes, sort of like an ocean wave. I don't know how to explain it better than that. We don't see, you do see surface wave devices and microwave, exotic devices. Hi, Augie, love these, but can't always get to watch. From M0BND, thanks for watching and the thumbs up. The guy in St. Martin in Maine today, and he said he had a buddy pull antenna. Good, very good. Okay. Yeah, just shove it in the hole there. That would work just fine. Any lengths. Okay. Let's see. What about a hand wave? You've heard what a microwave is, right? Very small flit of the wrist. That's a microwave. All right. Fairly new ham and a member of the Oakland Radio Communications Association. And we're helping the Oakland Aviation Museum revive their ham station. This is from Peter B. Crawrup. I think that's right. Says happy Thanksgiving. Their current equipment consists of a rebuilt Kenwood TS930, a mic, some Carroll 1109 coax. Never heard of that. The antenna is down and scrapped due to age, corrosion, etc. The antenna was a horizontal dipole stretched between two masts on the roof. It's approximately 30 feet from ground level. The antenna would be east-west. For what it's worth, the roof is a Quonset style hut type. Okay. length of the link. Unfortunately, I didn't look at the link. I'd have to do that. Distance between the two masts is 113 feet, which is a little bit short for 80 meters. You are probably going to have to put in just a little bit of loading to make that work on 80. One of our members is considering using an Alpha Delta DXCC to get as many bands as possible. My question would be, is it worth considering to use a central mast to get the different sections of the antenna to a 45-degree angle, or leave it horizontal? If you get that thing up higher above that metal roof, it'd be helpful. And if the way you can do it is getting that up high in the air, that would work. Let's see. The email, because one be rejected for DMR ID. I don't see why anybody would be rejected for DMR ID. Go to brandmeister.com, Brandmeister, MEIS.com, and follow their instructions for getting the ID. A hand wave? Oh, yes. Okay. MFJ 1786 mag loop, antenna horizontal and balcony 27 feet above the ground. Would vertical position be better for DX? Well, you can try it. I have a 1788 that's on the roof in a horizontal position. I'm not real high on mag loops right now. I've tried using them, and the operational messiness of having to constantly change frequency is an issue for me. It's why I'm looking at the buddy pole, by the way. Some people find that they just fill their purposes great. Okay, this is from Chris Franco, KD2QQR. And he says, first, thanks for the great videos. Helped me with my general test. I live in an apartment complex. Oh, let's see. It's one of 8 units in the building. I'm on the 2nd floor. I have neighbors on both sides of me. I have a very small wood balcony out my back bedroom with a truss overhang above it. Basically, I live in a non-conductive box. My problem is that now that I can get into HF communications, I don't have any idea on how to get an antenna up that would be remotely usable where I live. MFJ makes a balcony antenna. Connects to the railing. It's a whip. They call it a hamstick. And then there's a counterpoise on it. It might get you on HF. You can take a look at that. You can also try the various loops and see what you can do. If it's a non-conductive box, you can string an antenna inside and see what you can do, although you never know what you're interfering with when you transmit on that. Cannot attach anything to the outside, and hanging wires on the inside from my ceiling is not doable due to the interior layout and other family members. Pretty much at a transmission ability loss. Thought about a mobile rig for my SUV, but I don't want to spend all my time in the vehicle. Do you have any insights on how to work through my issue, or have you seen any antennas that can work in my situation? You're in a tough situation. I would say persevere. Look at MFJ and see what they have in terms of their balcony antenna. And, you don't have to mount it right on the balcony. You can mount it back a little ways. I don't know how big your balcony is, but you might look at a buddy pole, either buddy pole or a buddy stick. There are some ARRL books on antennas for difficult situations. So see what you can find there. You may end up with some sort of a loop. How are we doing here? 535-foot loop. That was good. Okay. Are you enjoying your new Americron linear? It's actually pretty ancient, but new to me. It works fine. Ian Sharples. Dave, can I use an auto antenna tuner unit with one input? I want to connect a manual antenna tuner unit in bypass so I can use the switch. Okay, I'm trying to read between the lines here and see what he's got. If you have your automatic antenna tuner in your rig, turn it off, bypass it if you're going to use an external tuner. Don't use both of them. If you want to connect a manual antenna tuner and bypass, it would be in series with the others. Bypass the one, use the other, bypass the other, use the one. Something like that, I think. Okay, I don't think we're going to get through all of these. Let's see. So, this is from Bill, KD0TIN. So, having been raised by my grandparents, and Grandpa is now silent key. He taught me a lot. So after I got my ticket, then proceeded to upgrade to extra. I still get plenty of non-believers, naysayers, and the general that it will never work. Well, that's strange. Station ICOM 706. It's one of the first of the little smaller HF radios. Yaesu FT 2100B amp. LDG auto tuner, 80 meter inverted V at 53 feet. Alenco 2-meter rig, everything including jumpers is perfect vision. RG 675 ohm with end compression F connectors. Where coax comes into the shack, all are wall plates used for TV and the like. Over the past 4 years, many contacts and DX RG6 outperform most 50 ohm and the F connectors at lower loss. Okay. My Yaesu amps, 1200 watt PEP, and the coax wall plate jumpers and F connectors take all the power I can throw at them. If you're in sideband, yes. And would love to provide videos. The question is knowing my setup and knowing a little background. If I created twin lead using RG6, would that cut my already low loss and HF even more? It wouldn't be noticeable. It really wouldn't. Second question, have you ever seen a mic that requires phantom power work without phantom power? No. Plus, I use an F connector on my mic cord that is converted to an ICOM proprietary cord, and the audio is awesome. The connector shouldn't affect that, and works like a dream. Also have converted a handset mic from a train locomotive. Oh, from a real train locomotive to F connector to work in the ICOM and Kenwood TS520. Well, if it works, great. Go for it. There's no rule that says you have to use a certain connector or anything like that. When I had my HW16, the RF connector was actually an RCA plug, which was a royal pain to connect with coax. Robert Ellison reports he still has his ICOM 706 Mark IIG. That was a classic radio. Really is a classic radio. How does sloping landscapes affect dipole and inverted V transmission properties? Well, no matter how you put the antenna up, you're going to tend to push direction. Your radiation will tend to go downslope, in the downslope direction, because it's just the way the reflector is set up. Okay, this is from Joe Anderson, KC1KNC. Thank you for the ILANTS HD1 video. The FCC ID number that appears on the sticker in this device, 2AAR8 ILANTS HD1, does not appear in the FCC database, so I wonder if the sticker ID is real or fake. Okay, I looked it up. The company is 2AAR8. And AILUNCEHD1 is the device ID. So the company ID is 2AAR8. I looked in the database, and Joe is correct. It is not there, which surprises me that they'd put that in there. Maybe they are hoping, this is not how they're supposed to do it, to sell prior to getting the approval. You're not supposed to do that. That is what the ID will be when it comes out. But a couple weeks ago I looked this up, and indeed that was not in the FCC database. I find the situation relevant regulations confusing. Woo, welcome to the party. There is a lot of stuff going on. If a radio transmits only in the ham bands and does not scan, it doesn't need any type approval. But if it scans, which they all do, it gets into a different set of rules. So, yeah, the ID is genuine, that's what it will be, but I looked all over the place for the actual certification and couldn't find it. And I apologize because I reviewed the HD1 and thought and still think it's a great rig. Okay, let's see. Kevin Hughes. And he says, is the use of stranded copper wire for dipole antennas a good idea? Yes, it's a whole lot easier to work with than solid copper. Won't they add extra inductance to the antenna because the strands are wound? No, they all short against each other, so there's really no extra inductance there. You're fine with the stranded. In fact, it's a lot easier to deal with. This one is from the same person, Kevin Hughes. I'm thinking about lightly spray painting my long wire antenna to camouflage it from our neighborhood pansy police. Will that retard the effectiveness of it? Thanks, Kevin. Probably not. If insulation and the paint will be an insulator, just acts as a dielectric on there. It will slightly change the tuning, slightly, very slightly. If you were painting a radome, I'd say something different. You need to use special radome paint, but for painting a wire to camouflage it, to change the color, you're just not going to affect it that much, so you're fine. Okay, hello from Ketchikan, Alaska. Hello, I've actually been there. Thinking about the 818ND. If QRP is your thing, it's a great radio. See the review in the January 2019 QST, which just came out electronically yesterday. And the FT818 is the successor to the 817, and it is a very well thought of radio for QRP. Again, it is QRP, okay, but it's all mode. And it will also work FM on VHF. Okay, here's from Kevin Hughes. Is the use of insulated copper wire for long wire antennas a bad idea because the wire is covered, therefore reducing the effectiveness of the radiated signals? The insulator is not a resistor. It's a dielectric. And so what that does is slightly change the surface capacitance. So, it slows down the radio wave by a titch. So your antenna will be an inch or two shorter than it would be if it were just bare wire. But that gets lost in the construction of the antenna. Okay, this is from YB2WA. Can you help me? I can connect Cat FL Digi to my radio. Thanks, Dave. In order for me to connect FL Digi to my radio, which is the ASU FTDX3000, I have to use an additional piece of software. The piece of software comes from the same place you get FL Digi. There's a bunch of FLXXX pieces of software. One of them is FLRig, R-I-G, FLRIG. So you run FL Digi, you also run FLRig, and use FLRig to talk to your radio. It's a lot easier to talk to your radio with that, and then FLRig sits there in the background and handles communications with FL Digi. So whenever I run FL Digi, I run FLRig also. So I think that will help you make it a lot easier. Ketchikan, Alaska, there's a tourist train there. I took that It's beautiful country up there. Jeff Wittern, KE0KRO. Hi Dave, just a quick question. I have an old Hallicrafters S108 that I restored in my office at work. Would like to listen to the bands at night when I'm alone and running close down on our computer systems. Do not have any way to get an antenna outside for the receiver, and was wondering if you have any great ideas of what I could use for an antenna that would be better than a long wire in the drop ceiling. If you're in a computer center, you're probably in the equivalent of a Faraday cage, and I don't imagine you're going to get much even with the long wire. If there's some way you can just sneak 10 feet of that outside the building, I think you might find that you would get more. Otherwise, just a longer wire in the building. I imagine it's a very noisy environment. Just a minute, we've got a bad comment there. I don't know why people do that. Okay. G7 from the UK. I really like the red pillow with the play arrow on the shelf behind you. Yes, in Q&A video. This is from Mark Strawcutter, KC3MLA. That, you see it up there. That is a YouTube pillow. I picked it up at a YouTube event. I answered a question from the announcer and in return got the pillow. So it's one of my prized things up there on that high shelf. Okay, we're coming up on 1 o'clock. We are into December. Questions, we're into December, so we're catching up. We're not going to get all of them done today. We've been broadcasting for over an hour now. I want to say to all of you who are watching, thank you. Thank you very much. Have happy holidays. It's in the middle of Hanukkah right now, so happy holidays to everybody, and also looking forward to a Merry Christmas. And keep those emails coming. Again, hamradioanswers@gmail.com will get to me. And now I'm very nearly caught up. I think we'll get caught up next week. And I've tried really hard to answer the questions that are in the text feed here. Thank you so much for participating. It makes this hour one I really look forward to every week. So I'm going to say 73 now and close down, and we'll talk to you, I hope, next week. And I'll be putting out a video, I hope on Wednesday or Thursday, with more tests on the buddy poll. So tune in, subscribe, like, share, and go forth and do good in the world. And we'll talk to you later. 73.